But I do have an interactive way to begin, so we can go ahead and begin it while we wait for everyone here. And I know a number of you have done this before with other webinars or when you've taught with your classes. So what I'm asking here, again, I'm Jamie Landau, Director of the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching, and happy to facilitate the webinar today on interpreting and responding to SOIs in class and beyond. So while we wait for a few more folks to show up, I've got a question for y'all, which is what are the values of SOIs? What might you think are some values, some positives, some benefits of them? But what are some limitations of them? And you can go ahead and type them on this blue whiteboard and by using the type tool. The type tool is in the top left-hand corner. And you can just kind of move your arrow over underneath limitations or values. I may move them around if the board gets a little full. So go ahead, and Anita and Shalise and Jaume. Great, thank you. So someone already put on there, they can help us become better teachers. So I may ask that person, and we'll talk about it a bit. What do you mean? How do they help us become better teachers? Could you add to that? Like, is there a particular part of the SOI or what you do with them that helps you become? Okay, summation of feedback. Good. Looks like someone was typing a sentence and maybe stopped. So yeah, too late to use in the semester. Hi, June. We just started, June, and we are typing on the board values and limitations of SOIs. And I can go ahead and delete that one. That helps me see if for who was doing that, I can move that for right now. So someone can go ahead. I love it. You guys are putting in little O's and circles. So if everyone, and add more, please, while we wait for other folks to join. So I agree. Someone said too late to use during the semester. So a limitation is that you can't correct the course while you're teaching it because they come at the end of it. Correct. Yep. So I'm gonna give you the research in a bit. What the research says are the values and limitations of these. So not appropriate as a value independent of other. I may ask that person to unmute and share kind of what you mean. Oh, other factors. Got it. Good. So I hear someone writing then that like these SOIs as a singular factor or type of evidence, they may be a little limited and flawed, right? That they need to be used in combination with or in comparison to other kinds of student feedback. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Someone says you can use SOIs to improve course design. Yeah, someone says SOIs can help us, maybe not even with the content, right, of our course, but yeah, the flow in our organization. Good. Any others? Keep adding some more. What other values or limitations might we see with SOIs? I'm actually impressed y'all so far have more on the values side. Since, you know, be honest here in this discussion, right? What are some frustrations you've had with SOIs? Maybe even how they're used at a university or interpreted. Hi, Laverne. We have already begun a little bit. So if you see we are adding things to the board of what values or limitations we think or we've experienced with SOIs. Sometimes those with extreme emotions about them course gives it, maybe they're going to have to continue that. One person's opinion and they might just be angry. Okay, yeah, so kind of this, I'm going to move these over, this notion of, you know, someone kind of using it to vent, like a student using it to vent, and then that kind of dominates maybe if they were to give feedback actually on your teaching, right, on strategies. This difference between making a comment about a faculty member's behavior or venting an emotion versus giving feedback on an actual teaching strategy. So we're gonna talk about that today. What else? A couple more. What else? I want everyone to put some on here. So Laverne, I don't know if, since this is anonymous, if you put some on here, but other limitations or values has helped you improve course design, improve teaching strategies. Y'all are a positive group. I was expecting the limitation side to be full. What else? What else? I'm going to push you here before I tell you what the research says. What else? We hear about this a lot in higher ed, especially so far. I think most of us in the training are women, and a number of us are from diverse backgrounds. I'm giving you a hint. Ooh, so someone's saying, what? They need to provide feedback earlier? Ooh, we'll get to that question, yeah, in a second. What is a challenge that a lot of research has shown about student feedback, SOIs, student evaluations? For women, people of color? Waiting for someone to put something on the board. I'm giving you a hint. Not everyone takes it. Oh, okay, so someone added response rates can be low. Yep. So response rates can be low, so that can be a limitation. Well, so what I was talking about, I'm going to go ahead and add it here, but I definitely assumed, I know Anita knows this research, but there's racial, gender bias, even international faculty, there's research on that student SOIs, I'm going to talk about this, reveal bias even for faculty who may have accents or things like that. So, you know, these are very serious issues that we want to talk about today and how we interpret and respond to our SOIs. Okay, so I hope now y'all are wondering, well, what else, what additional research does the research say about interpreting and responding to SOIs? So I'm going to move to the next slide, and that's going to erase our board, but I've recorded this, so we'll be able to see it if you watch the recording. So what does the research say are some values or limitations of we call them SOIs at VSU, student opinions of instruction. In the literature, they're often called student evaluations of teaching, SETs. But we'll talk even about why the word evaluation may not be an appropriate word. So I'm going to start with the positive here on the left. Like y'all said, you know, I'm going to go to the bottom there. SOIs provide summative and formative feedback to instructors to reflect on and use for improving our teaching and learning, including how to set goals and make action plans. So this difference between formative and summative assessment, that SOIs can be kind of used for both, even though they're kind of given at the end of a course. The first one said, it's a tool for gathering information about student perceptions or opinions. I didn't work at VSU when they made the decision to call them SOIs, but I've asked Michael Black, and he said the Senate, the Faculty Senate, and I don't know, June, if you know more about this, because I think you're on the Senate, but the Faculty Senate at one point made a very distinct decision to call them opinions of instruction for this very reason, that their student perceptions, they're not really, you know, evaluations, and I'm going to talk about that on the negative, the limitation side. Another thing is that student, oh yeah, Joanne, great, so you learned that. Another thing is that they give students a voice, right? They are a forum for them to vent. They're also a way to value and empower student voices, for better or worse. And then in that third bullet point on the left, it says quantitative and qualitative. So our SOIs have both qualitative and quantitative data. And I know a number of you are mixed method folks. So that's a positive, right? That it has a mixed method approach. It's standardized. And it is some kind of form of evidence to include in our performance reviews. But I put evidence in quotes because of what we're going to talk about with the limitations. And since, as one of you put on the board at the beginning, these are just one, they should just be used as one factor, right, among many. And in fact, VSU's official provost webpage that talks about SOIs says they should only be used as one factor. They should not be used as the single determining factor in a professor's evaluation. Any questions before I move on to the negatives, before we, about the positives? I mean, I think y'all got most of them, and then I added those from the research. Okay, so on the right side, and some, oh, yeah.
This is Laverne. I would just be
Yeah.
curious to see how our students actually perceive this. I know when I was going through, like when I was in college with my undergrad, and I would get these evaluations at the end of the semester, I'm thinking, okay, what the heck? Why? I mean, why even bother? Do they even use them? Um, I'm just wondering if you know, I mean, do students feel like that their feedback is heard and
Oh, that is,
taken
yeah, because I mean,
seriously?
yeah, the positive is the forum exists, but whether or not they see it implemented. So that's actually going to be what I'm going to talk about, Laverne. You may know sort of on some strategies on how to show students that you're implementing their feedback. I admit when I did the research for this webinar, I didn't actually find or look for studies on the students' perceptions of the evaluation process. But I'm not going to talk about it today, but probably all of you know, though, that the research does suggest you need to talk to students about that, right? That when you deliver them, whether through an online course, so in your module, or in person, that you tell them you take it seriously, that you read them, that your department head reads them, that these are used to help faculty improve their teaching and get evaluated. So all of the best practices say to do that with your students. But I actually, Laverne, I'm gonna have to look that up. Didn't look for nor see a study on whether students recognize the impact of these. So I can say with the Thank a Teacher notes, and some of you may have gotten them, students told me when I went to SGA to talk to them about the Thank a Teacher initiative, which is very different than an SOI, but they actually were excited to know that their voice, they had a place to kind of share their feedback to professors. So, but you know, that's a more praising kind of a situation than an SOI. So that's a good question. So some of the limitations that y'all brought up, low response rates. And by the way, I looked in Michael Black's data on I don't know if you guys have seen it, on our VSU overall response rates, and look at them. I find that very not surprising. But this past spring, we had overall, they do break them down by college and all that, which you can get the information from him. But overall, we only had a response rate this past spring of 39%, last fall of 40%, previous fall of 51%. And the reason he didn't have the data for spring 2020 was because, if y'all remember, the pandemic, they decided not to kind of release our response rates unless you chose to. So generally, it looks like our VSU average response rates are hovering between 40 and 50. Now, that's interesting because if you go to VSU's Academic Affairs website, Michael Black's website on SOIs, I'm going to read you verbatim something he says about response rates. And by the way, he and Sherry Gravitt were very supportive of me creating this webinar. So this is exactly what we're wanting to do, is educate faculty about response rates and the limitations and values of SOIs. So as it says on VSU's Academic Affairs website about guidelines for interpreting SOIs, I'm going to read this for you. And the link to this webpage is included at the end of the PowerPoint. Ratings may not be an accurate reflection of the entire class when smaller proportions of students respond. This problem can be particularly acute in small classes. And this is key. It is recommended that at least 2/3 of enrolled students must be included in the results to have any confidence in the results. As proportions decrease, particularly in small classes, there is greater opportunity for the rating of one or few students to disproportionately affect the results. So what I'm already noticing is that Academic Affairs, Michael Black, is already recognizing that if we have less than 2/3 of enrolled student response rate, that already limits the data. Right? The data should be, as he said, not as confident in the results. So So we're going to talk about that today through this webinar on how then we respond as faculty and how we manage this data, because the data still exists and it can still be helpful to us, and it still will be used in our evaluations. But I wanted to point that out because I thought that some faculty taking this webinar may be struggling with the fact that you're getting very low response rates, but then you feel like you're being judged by those. And so here's some kind of evidence for you to include maybe in your reflections. And please raise your hand or ask a question about any of this as I go through it, if you have other thoughts. The other thing which I brought up was that a lot of research shows that there's bias against women, faculty of color, and faculty from other marginalized groups, international faculty with accents. So I've worked one-on-one with faculty and even myself in when I respond to my SOIs in my annual eval to talk about the bias against, the likelihood of bias against me, especially when I'm teaching diversity topics. So, so again, these are sort of challenges to SOIs. Yeah, exactly, June. I said that I think right at the beginning of this webinar. Yeah, that, and a number of you, I think, have all of us have different diverse backgrounds. So yeah, these are contexts to when we're reading. I love it, Laverne. Reading our SOIs and how we're responding to them to keep in mind. And I'm going to give you some strategies on how to address these things. Often SOIs and evals can be generic, irrelevant, or have non-actionable items. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna give you examples of how to address that in a bit. This is sort of the beginning of the webinar to get your brains moving. Probably a lot of you know this about the fourth bullet point, right? Even faculty with high scores can be poor teachers. Conversely, even faculty with low scores can be good teachers. So I have a research article that quotes that. So again, if you ever want data to back up some of your challenges with your SOIs, I've got it for you. And then the last one, which Anita, you probably know, given you're in teacher ed or music education, there isn't actually in the data a strong correlation between student evaluations and learning. Now that's different than teaching, but basically what they're saying is the typical systematic student evaluation given at the end of the semester, at least that universities use, really doesn't show how much students learn. Now it can show a lot about the teacher and their behaviors or teaching strategies, but not necessarily actually how much the students learned. So again, this is a very nuanced way to start thinking about SOIs, and you might be having a lot of questions right now. So I think we're gonna now get into the meat of the webinar. So for today, by the end, we've already begun to recognize the value of SOIs, but also their limitations. We are going to compare tips for interpreting the quantitative and qualitative data. So hopefully now you're like, wow, this is way more complex than I thought. How am I going to interpret this now? And so we're going to learn some strategies and share some. We are going to now even flesh out how to use them for teaching and learning. So even though they're limited, even though some of them may be biased, some of the comments may be irrelevant, we're going to actually work through how to effectively use them. And I know many of you probably already do. Yep, there's Anita jumping in with the evidence for that. And then we are going to actually take some time at the end of the webinar today to design in-class activities to collect and respond to student feedback. So this goes back to one of you put on the board, wait, what? We can get feedback from students like before the end of the semester? Yes, and that's exactly what you're going to learn today in this webinar, given some of the limitations of the SOIs and even like Anita's saying that they don't value learning, or they don't demonstrate learning. Gio, that's a complicated question. Would student letter grades measure learning? If that depends upon if the faculty members' assessments rubrics, right, were we're actually measuring learning. And I think the best faculty do, but again, not the grade, not necessarily. It really matters what their assessment is and their rubrics and all that. So yeah, lots of big picture questions, and I know a lot of you have backgrounds in education today, so please jump in like you already are. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I'm loving that that what we're doing is provoking your thoughts. So okay, so given these values and limitations of student evaluations, we can still interpret and use them, but we need to do so carefully and strategically. So what I'm going to do now is share some tips for interpreting them. And I'm going to start by walking us through 5 different tips. Again, that was in the research or that other teaching centers recommend in their workshops. And these specifically will address some of the values and the limitations. And I'm going to go through them, but please, we've got a small group. Continue to, jump into the chat or unmute yourself. And I'm going to ask at times that after I go through them that y'all share if you've ever tried any of them before with success, or maybe more tips that you have. So let me kind of go through them first, and you can like jump in the chat, and then we're going to have some time to kind of ask questions and talk through them for a bit. So there's a big list right here for you. So so again, this is from the research. I know the type got kind of small. I was trying to fit it all. So and I know some of these you already do, and so we won't spend a lot of time talking about them. But the first thing in all the research on how to analyze and interpret the SOI or student evaluation data is to really focus on the themes and the trends about teaching and learning, right? Rather than that outlier, that anomaly, or that isolated data. And so anyone who's done method research, we know this, right? But then when you actually read your SOIs, right, don't you always get like emotionally hung up on that one student, right, who's venting or who says something really crazy or says something really great, right? So this can be positive too. It can be like, she's a rock star professor, like, well, that's interesting, but that actually doesn't say anything much about your teaching, right? So again, just like being a good researcher, the research on SOI says focus on the themes and the trends that are about teaching and learning rather than the outliers, the anomalies, or the isolated data. And that same recommendation is for our tenure and promotion committees too. So which I know doesn't always happen. So we could point them to some of this research. Like I said, it's common for us to speculate or even emotionally dwell on those isolated scores, but it's not statistically or methodologically, a strong way to interpret this kind of data. The other kind of point I wanted to make in the research was that they said an increase or decrease of a few decimal points really does not necessarily correlate to a significant change. And I'm going to now quote again from the Academic Affairs SOI website that Michael Black has. And he also backs this up. So I found this in the research, and then he backs it up on his website. And he says a single mean score can be a few decimal points higher or lower simply due to the random sample of students in a particular course from term to term. And so as it says on the VSU's academic website, quote, small differences in individual evaluations should not, and he puts it under, underlined, be used as a basis for differential decisions. So again, and I do not want to focus just today by any means on evaluation, like our annual evals, but what that's saying even for you as you read your SOI data for growth is don't worry about whether it's even a positive or negative data point, the the small little minutia changes, right? It's more the patterns over time and the more significant, right? What methodological folks say statistically significant changes. So we know that, right? But it's important for us to have a reminder. Third, qualitative comments. So for those of you who are mixed method folks know this, but qualitative comments can help us make sense of quantitative data. But contradictions are not unusual, nor are they always bad. So again, right, when you're trying to make sense of your SOI data, yes, compare the ratings to the comments, but recognize that even in the research on student evaluations, it says those are often contradictory. All right. So keep that in mind. And 4 and 5, I think, are really important, and I'd love to then open it up after I'm done with this. But okay, so qualitative comments can often include non-actionable items that you can't address in your course. And the research showed that's where often the bias occurs as well. So what is a non-actionable item? So for instance, I'm going to give you that, like, you can do about. So I was reading this article and they said, here's a non-actionable item, actionable item. If a student says, I wish this class wasn't so early, right? Like, I mean, you don't always have control over your schedule when you're assigned to teach, but who does? Your department head, right? So some of these comments really have nothing to do with you as a teacher, right? But you could give that information to someone else who does have action or power over them, right? So students, as we know, make comments about your classroom, like the physical classroom or the time of day, or maybe even a curricular element. And again, the research says you don't have to address those, nor do you want to spend time addressing those if you really can't, but pass them on to other people who can. Here's another one because at the other end of the spectrum, I was telling you guys, let's say a student says, this professor rocks. Well, that's great for your ego. And by the way, I love getting those evals too, but it's not really about your teaching and learning, right? Like, that's not, maybe about emotions or something if that was one of your learning outcomes. But basically, so that's not really an actionable item for you. It's interesting and it's nice, but if the student had written this, listen to how this could have been different. The professor's feedback on my papers were helpful. Even though I don't like all the revisions she made us do, they helped me be a better writer. So, you know, or if the student had said, this professor rocks, all of her feedback on my paper is helpful. So again, you're seeing the difference between an actionable item and a non-actionable item, I hope. And I'm sure you've unfortunately all seen maybe when you got a biased comment, right? Which we definitely want to pass those on to HR or the diversity office or things like that. And then number 5, get another set of eyes. So this is especially important, or I put a little asterisk after a couple of these, for those of us who are marginalized faculty, right? To help us filter out useless or biased comments from students and summarize really what's actionable, right? And what we can focus on to grow, than what will kind of, derail us. And so the research says it's really important always to get another set of eyes, either a trusted faculty colleague, to talk about it with you, and not just to vent. I mean, we all need a colleague to vent, especially when we get some difficult SOIs, but someone who's actually going to work through it with you, like think through how it's about your teaching and learning, or how you might grow from it. Or y'all can meet with me or e-learning folks or other staff in CELT and e-learning to help you problem solve how to interpret and respond your SOIs. I've done that with a number of faculty. So that's really important for those of us who, as I said, may get biased SOIs or really feel like some of the comments, especially in the qualitative data, is irrelevant. And I want to make one more comment about this, like more, again, like comments from students that might be not about your teaching and learning. So I have a quote here from Dr. Joshua Eiler. He's a pretty big name right now in faculty development. He's at University of Mississippi, actually. Anita, I know you were at Southern Miss, but he has a new book out called How Humans Learn, the Science and Stories Behind Effective College Teaching. And he really distinguishes a big difference between student feedback about a professor's behaviors. So like he's talking about like whether a faculty member has a sense of humor or encouraging, versus when students observe whether professors are using evidence-based teaching strategies. And I would kind of counter him a bit that those behaviors are often emotional, and I believe that emotion is a type of teaching strategy. But what he's getting at is that a lot of the research shows, and this is where Anita was going earlier, is that behaviors are less likely correlated with student learning, whereas good teaching strategies are. So I'm bringing this up again because related to number 4 and 5, and maybe 3, you will get qualitative comments about your behaviors, right? Especially if women, like they'll even make comments about our professionalism, right? Or what we're wearing, or whether we smile or not, you know, and those are not often correlated to learning, right? Or relevant to your teaching. And so that's kind of what I think Joshua Eiler is getting at, that the best kind of feedback from students is feedback about good teaching strategies, right? And then if they're able to articulate it, how that impacts their learning. So that was a lot. And I'd love to take a couple minutes now for y'all to share some additional tips for interpreting your data and or asking questions. And we have more of the webinar, but I had this moment for us to kind of share and ask questions. Please raise your hands if you want to talk. Let's see. Anita says, I recall years ago hearing, reading about the capacity of humans to deal with negativity. Generally, positives work better, just thinking online. Is there a way that students have to respond with positive comments about achieving course objectives? Oh, so to me, and that actually we'll get at our next slide when we're going to talk about, like, so what do you do with the fact that our current template, like the one that we all just, it gets delivered, is limited with the questions. So Anita, my first answer to you is, and you know this, but we are able to add, right, 2 to 3 extra SOI questions. And so you can add an SOI question that is more positive and correlates to a core learning objective. But yeah, you want to talk? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm always afraid I'll talk too much, so stop me.
No, that's okay.
But the difference is we have this set that the administration gives to everybody. So there's some kind of reliability when everybody gets asked the same question. So exactly. It seems like something needs to be changed about those existing ones. And again, I'm just speaking out loud. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Gion, do you know, you're on the Senate, I know you're not on this committee, but I thought they were working on questions, or did they just revise them, or?
I thought they just revised it, or before I joined VSU, actually Steve Downey, my department head, he told me he was on the committee that revised it. So I'm guessing it's not going to happen soon in the future.
So what you're saying is the current ones were recently revised, is what you're thinking?
Yeah, well, yeah, in a couple, within the last 5 years, I guess, because I came 2 years ago, and it was already this one. But Steve said he was on the committee and then he revised it. So,
so Anita, the answer is these are better than the ones I had before, I guess.
So, in other words, they're not all that great no matter when they came up.
Yeah, true. Right, which is why we will get to strategies on the next slide, and things. But Shalise, yeah, you have a question or comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, I because of my third year review, like I had an opportunity to delve like into my SOIs, which was really disheartening. I spent like, you know, you good 20 minutes crying over them, and then you're like, okay, how can I use this? I really love your first one is focus on themes and trends, because how I set up my like thinking about my SOIs, because I had to like consolidate the information and put it into a document, that I found my themes and trends, and then I made everything action items, and that really helped me, instead of just like crying about like the 2 people who hate me, which I have a hard time when people hate me, so of course like I'm like, oh, why? But you know, it was really helpful, because it was really, you're saying, like that negativity, I mean, I just wallowed in it for a while. And I was like, I'm not in the right career. Oh my heavens. I switched mid-career. I mean, I was a high school teacher and doing great, but then I switched my career thinking this is what I need to do. And then I get these and I was like, I've made a mistake. But so thank you for focusing on themes and trends, because that really helps.
Good. Yeah. And positivity, like Anita said. And look, by the way, Shalise, I don't know if you can see the chat, if you're able to see now, but you've got some hugs and some common friends in solidarity with you. So June, yeah, go ahead.
So obviously I was unhappy with my SOIs, and then I wasn't sure how to improve it. So what I implemented was a pre and post survey that focused on the learning objective of the course, and that helped me. It's not about it's not even their opinions about my course or my teaching, but it's about it's like diagnostics. How the pre-course, how much do you know? Do you think you know about the topics that needs to be learned? And then at the end, how much do you think you learned? And that comparison, I didn't have a chance to present it to the students this time, but you know, I've done it before, and then it actually helped students to realize how much they think they improved throughout the course. And then having that recognition, I think, would help them reflect better in the SOIs if the time permits, because I wasn't able to do it before the SOI began this time.
So what I love you're doing is you're already addressing what we talked about, that SOIs are limited, not only in time, but in going back to what Anita and I were talking about, in that they don't measure learning. So you've now created your own tool to try to get at learning. Exactly. Yeah, and I'm going to give some more examples of doing that in a bit. Because we are allowed to do our own measurements and add other types of data to this. Yeah, exactly, Shalice, sort of like pre and post reflection. So y'all, I love it. You guys are already going into like the problem solving, like how do we deal with this? So I'm going to just move forward because I want to get into those examples because I think you're going to have even more. So basically what I wanted to say after the slide was like, basically that they still can be used effectively and that they're not the only form of student feedback you can collect, which is what you guys were saying. So I had this next slide where I wanted us to think differently about our SOIs, kind of what you were saying, Shalice, right? And I guess I should put on here like what Anita said, like a positive. I should have, maybe I'll do that now when I give this again, sort of first a positive reframing. I imagine a lot of you are already starting to think differently about your SOIs or now going through this webinar, but these are just some things to kind of keep in your head before we now go into more strategies like June and people are sharing. So SOIs are limited, but they're not inaccurate. They're not just, they will never be thrown out completely, and they are data. There is some systematic accuracy to them. So they have value. They can especially be used for formative growth across our career, not even just for our summative promotion and tenure. And I feel like I'm speaking to the prior with this group. And so the key thing is then to approach our SOIs with a growth mindset. And Shalice, this might help you too when I think we want to have those emotional moments where similar, like I cry or I get pissed off at what a student says. But it's really important for us to have a growth mindset about that, right? Not let that derail us. So meaning, well, rather than thinking, am I good enough, right, Shalice? So that's kind of where you were like, oh, I'm not good enough for this career, I should quit it, right? Rather than thinking you're not good enough or you're not good at this, or some cynical faculty say, students can't judge my teaching, like that's sort of like in the other direction, right? A faculty member who's really like just, well, their opinion doesn't matter, right? The positive, the growth mindset is how can I improve from this? Yeah, Laverne, I think it's good for us to maybe do some power poses or eat some chocolate, right, before we read our SOIs. So y'all are already thinking differently about SOIs, but I put this slide in here just in case someone who went through this workshop really wasn't at that approach. Yes, they do, June, yep. But not all adjunct faculty get evaluated because their contracts are so short. So, but yes, they do get the data. And we're not, Shalice, going back to you and so many faculty like us who take our SOIs seriously, which is good. But remember, teaching is really hard, and even Anita and Laverne, some of you on here, I know you've been teaching way longer than me, and both of you have told me, because I've gotten to know both of you over the year or two, how still hard it is, right? Especially during the pandemic, especially as our student demographics change. And so it's always hard, and no one ever receives glowing comments. So so this growth mindset is really important. Oh, it looks like June Laverne may have gotten kicked out. Hopefully she'll come back. So what do we do about this? I think you guys are going to love this part. So here are some in-class activities and reflections that you could implement to collect and respond to student feedback to improve as a teacher. So June, these are kind of similar. You did more, I would say, a more methodological, quantitative possibly approach with your pre and post tests. So I could have put that up as another kind of column here. But these are 4 other ways that you might collect student feedback throughout the semester. And so this is a lot on these slides. So what I wanted to do is let y'all kind of read through these examples and then open it up for which ones you want to ask more questions about. I even have some handouts I could give you on the midterm one or the early course one. So, oh, June, you do the midterm or on ones as well. You just call them, oh, concern surveys. Interesting. Do you do it collaboratively though? So my example of the midterm one here is actually a collaborative Google Doc. So it's visible. Like, let me give you guys an example. They all type on it together. So it's not an individual survey. Is yours individual, June?
Yes, it's a Google form. I do it individually out of habit. I know about your method, the collaborative one, and I meant to try it, but I forgot.
Oh, you don't have to. Yeah, I mean, I stole it from someone else.
I wonder if it would bring out a different type of results, because concern survey, I tried it because out of my own concern as a course instructor, whether the students are working or on track or they feel good about their status as they complete a multi-week projects. And it kind of helped me to kind of problem solve as they, report their problems. But the collaborative feedback document, that would actually be used for different purposes.
Yeah, I agree with you. It definitely, you want to be careful. The collaborative one, you don't want it to err in groupthink too, right? Because they don't know who's typing, but they see, someone else's comments will influence theirs sometimes. So, I linked, for those of you who have never done these, I linked to 2 examples that I had. And by the way, I'm going to feel really vulnerable right here. You're going to see one that I did for my class last fall. And these students it was an intense class. So you're going to see how they were like, she's not valuing our opinions, right? So Shalise, look at this. Even me, director of the teaching center, gets some pretty harsh comments. So, basically, these 4 examples, the green, the blue, and the purple, are just different ways for you to collect feedback. So the first one happens early in the semester, and you could do like June does, like a pre-test or a survey. I linked to an example of a form that you could give them. The purpose and what June said is that kind of like her concern survey, you can then course correct in the middle of the course. So the importance is that when you do this, you've got to respond. I wish Laverne was still here. Let's see if she was able to get back on. Nope, she wasn't here. But these are what help you respond to the students, and they see how you value their feedback. So it's very important that if you do these, June, I don't know if you do it, but all the research shows you've got to talk to them about that you're going to now discuss the results with them, right? So yeah, like tell the students that you will discuss the themes from the feedback, right? And you've got to keep a positive tone and explain how you will make changes or why you won't. And, if y'all are looking at my example from the fall, 2020, I talked with those students, a couple of them in the end, you see, complain about like too much reading or certain things, and I talked to them why I wasn't going to back down on the reading. But I then went to my learning outcomes for the course, and I talked about why they need to learn this do this reading in college and things like that. So you don't have to make all the corrections that they recommend, but you want to have a very kind of transparent, like Shalise said, about being open with them about how you will improve and what you'll work on, but also reasons why you won't change this semester. So I felt a little vulnerable sharing that one with you because that was a pretty hard semester for me. Those students were really tough, if you can tell, right? So I tried my best to yes, exactly, June. Sorry, I wanted to tell you. So so if you're looking at mine, so what happened was the students just filled out, when I did the Google form, they just answered questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I went back and themed it, just like the research says to do. And I put them in the themes, and then I discussed them with the students with the themes. So exactly, June. Yeah, they didn't come up with the themes, right? I did that.
So, you shared this as an example of the collaborative document?
I am, but it's also a mix of the first month. I kind of mixed
okay.
first. Yeah, I kind of mixed the early course with the collaborative.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you're right. I'm mixing sort of the first 2 green columns with that example.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. And then the other form that I shared, well, I guess that's an early course too, but an end of semester student reflection. Has anyone ever done that? Actually, I thought you said earlier you had them do something like that. Did I miss a comment?
Yeah, at the end of every unit, I have them write a reflection or do some sort of reflective activity. And then we have sort of the overall discussion about the course, because I feel like the SOI is great, but sometimes they can't express themselves as well, or they're too lazy to do the SOI, so I try to get it out of them. But I really like the idea of the Google Doc, because I think some people also don't chime in and talk, because I'm just like, hey, what do you want to see that's different?
Well, so the difference is the anonymity, what's going on there. So notice in the columns on the left, and again, as June pointed out, these aren't mutually exclusive kind of versions, but the first 2 columns are anonymous. Do you kind of see that? So I know there's a lot here on the screen. Whereas when you're doing it verbally with them, it's not anonymous, right? Oop, did we lose you? I think we may have lost Shalise.
Oh no, I'm here.
Did you hear me?
This is Laverne. I lost connectivity a while ago, so if you shared a link to something, I didn't get it. Thank you, June.
Okay, I'll share it again.
That's okay. Yep. Thank you, June.
Yeah. Shalise?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, did you hear what I was talking about, the anonymity?
Yes, and that I think is my problem, is that because I'm just soliciting, just tell me, but that could be really hard to stand up in front of peers or even a teacher and say things you don't like.
Exactly, and so it's not. I agree, it's a type of reflection, but that's the limitation of that method that you were using. So, yeah, and the other thing I would ask you too, it sounds like for the end of the semester reflection that you have them do, you have them reflect on actual things they learned, right? Kind of like some of the bullet points I hear, like what did you learn? How did you learn?
Yeah.
Okay. I think your internet may be
so you have to reflect, like, how did this? Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me turn that off. Yeah, like they reflect on like the specific unit. So how did this unit tie into your better understanding of costume history? And so try to like make those connections, so they're realizing that they are learning.
Got it. So
I'm trying.
No. So that's good. That's what Anita was talking about earlier. So that's exactly why we're saying SOIs don't measure learning, but what you're doing, you're linking it to their learning outcomes and like the content that they're learning in the course. Yep. So that's good. That's good. I just wanted to make sure that's what you were doing, and it wasn't just, we can reflect on a lot of things, right? But we don't always reflect on our learning. So I just want to make sure that you are having them reflect on their learning, which you are. Which is kind of what some of the other examples I had here. And then similar for when you all write your reflections for your own, exactly, June. Yeah, like they have to keep learning how, they need to be taught how to even reflect on their learning, right? Which is, as y'all know, as educators. And the last column here is for y'all to do those reflections too. And by the way, I know we have to do them every year for our AFRAPs or for P&T, But the research shows we don't have, you know, that's just for the evaluative process. That's important. I think I'm speaking to the choir, but to do this on our own, like in your own journals or with your friends, you know, like that reflection doesn't have to always be for the summative kind of evaluative process, right? So to even just ask yourself, right, what do students consistently, that's key, right? Again, not the outlier, indicate, right, that are my strengths. All right, and then what do students maybe consistently say over and over again are things that I'm, you know, that I need to improve upon? And then what steps have I taken to address? I don't like the word negative, but I couldn't think of another way to fit it into my slide, right? And how are you, you know, did it work? And what resources are available to you to help you grow as a teacher? So our reflections can happen, of course, in the After app and for P&T, but yes, Anita, they do. And Anita, look at my question number, look at number 3 in my Google Doc form. I'm going to copy and paste it for you. Yes, we need to hold students accountable. This was what I asked them. Is there a habit I need to work on to improve as a student for this class? Yes, Anita. So I always, to my own, when I do these little reflections, feedback with students, I include a question that holds them accountable to their learning too. So it kind of says that here, buried in the green. It says, emphasize aloud to students that the purpose is not only to help you improve as a teacher, but for them to reflect and figure out what they need to do to improve as learners. Yes. I 100% agree with that. So I don't know have any of y'all ever included a question like that when you do these, when you collect this data? Nope. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, they do. Exactly. Yeah. And it's all then about their growth mindset. So, and look at what they wrote in response to my question, right? Right? They're like, I need to participate more. I need to ask questions. So it's interesting then comparing number 3, their answers to question 3 to their answers to questions 1 and 2, right? Because they were like, oh, the professor isn't, you know, giving everyone time to speak, or, you know, and then they admitted they weren't speaking up, right? So we then had a really intense but really good discussion in class about how I needed to empower more voices and how I would do that pedagogically, but also how they would empower each other to speak and speak up more. That, again, it's not just the professor learning and teaching this class, right? That they are part of this class community. So I almost find that the discussion with them after about this feedback is a really powerful moment, you know, for me and for them. Xiao Mei, I haven't heard from you. Do you have any questions right now before I have a final activity for all of you?
No. I just listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because some of this can be really new, right? Whoever put on the board at the beginning about could we collect data during the semester, this is it. This is it. Yes, the answer is yes. Look at all these versions, and then June and a couple other people shared some additional ones. Yeah, Laverne, go ahead.
So when we're looking at our SOIs, and honestly, I have just been looking at that semester's, and I kind of try to generalize, you know, the negative, and I kind of compare it to the semester before, you know, am I seeing anything, any trends in negative comments and that sort of thing. But where we go in to look at our SOIs, does it compile any of that kind of data for us so that we don't have to do it, or we don't have to create the things? I mean, does it do any of that for us?
No, not that I know of. I don't know, Jion, you always seem to kind of know how to work some of this magic, but not that I know of. But Laverne, that's a great question. That, yeah, they don't do the data doesn't do themes. It doesn't do like thematic analysis for us, and like you said, it doesn't compare across semesters or years. Correct. So I don't know. That's a good question to follow up with Michael Black, but I'm almost 99% sure. Oh, a word cloud. That's interesting. Yeah, maybe the new Smart Evals template has a word cloud, but yeah, I don't know. But correct, Laverne, we have to do that work as faculty. And so that's even what Shalise was sharing, but you may have gotten kicked out at one point, that right now she's preparing for her third year review. And so she's doing a thematic analysis right now. And similarly, I'm assuming comparing across 3 years or different semesters or different courses. So yeah, that's a limitation. And I mean, that would be a pretty developed software tool, but I don't think Smart Evals does that.
Well, and just for future reference, that might be another good professional development session is, to get together with a group or, whatever. I mean, have it hands-on and, kind of walk us through how to go and look at those things, or how to go across the years or the different semesters. And I don't know, just really kind of like hands-on training, hands-on.
Yeah, a little more.
Doing it.
Yeah, that's a good question. See, I assumed, but maybe I wrongly did, that folks like learn that in their different grad programs. But I think you're right that like I learned thematic analysis in my grad program, so that's like what I do. But I think you're right. We're all coming from different disciplinary or professional backgrounds, so a kind of thematic analysis sort of workshop. I like that. That was in the research I was reading, but I had to kind of make decisions. Shalise, one question, and then I have a really cool activity for all y'all to wrap up with. But
yeah, I was just gonna say, like when I was in there, like because it gives you all these numbers.
Oh,
like 4.35 out of 5. Like, oh, that's great. But then it goes in, and that's what training is, like how to actually read those, because then it gives you like your evaluation in your college and things like that. And so maybe just even a training on understanding the
I think your phone just cut out, but I think I know what you're saying. So I think Michael Black has that tool on his website, but I'll follow up with him, y'all, on that, because I'll follow up with that, because I think that's a great idea.
I just think it would be good, if we could all just, I mean, whatever session this is, but if we could have our own SOIs pulled up, and as they're showing us how to, work the numbers or extract the data or whatever, that we can actually do it with our own SOIs.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So here's the other thing, though. I mean, I really still want to emphasize to y'all, while I was doing carefully, how limited those SOIs are. So that was actually kind of my point of this webinar, was that collecting your data in other ways is really important with all these other formats. And so what I'd like everyone to do now really quickly, using what you just learned, is for you to quickly design a new to you in-class activity where you would collect and respond to student feedback about your teaching. So right here now, you just follow these little arrows, and you're going to you're basically asking and answering questions related to this discussion we just had here. So do you want it to occur early in the course? Do you want it to occur midterm or at the end of the semester? So make a decision about time, and like Jim said, your purpose for that. Do you want it to be a survey? Would you like to do a collaborative one? Would you like it to be spoken or written? Will the students complete it individually in small groups or together as an entire class? And then draft one of the sample questions. So similar to I know what Shalise is going to pick, right? Because Shalise, you said you were going to now ask a question about their accountability to their learning. So I'd like everyone now, please do this, because this is really important for you to kind of think how you can then address the limitations in your SOIs. So if you could just go ahead and then in the chat, answer each 3 of these arrows, right? So you could type in the chat, I'm going to do an early course, collaborative digital doc, as together as the entire class, and here's one of the questions they're going to answer. And when you pick that, type it in the chat, and that's you designing a new way to collect and respond to your student feedback about teaching. And while you guys do that, I'm going to see if I can find Michael Black's handout on interpreting SOIs, because I'm pretty sure he already had that. But while you guys work on that, I'll look. Any questions as you go through it, or we'll just wait for y'all to put them in the chat, and then we can answer any questions or help you.
I was always wondering, this is with regard to interpreting the SOIs, the department average and the university average, because they seem sometimes high, like 4 or above out of 5. And I was wondering, like, who are the ones that receive, I don't know, 5 or 4, 9, whatever? Are there features shared among those folks that kind of, show how they get such a high grade, or grade, not a grade, but score?
Okay, hold 1 sec. Let me just say, Shalise, y'all, before I answer your question, June, let me just get to everyone wants to do this exit ticket because you're applying kind of what we learned. So Shalise did a really great one she says she's going to do one beginning of the semester, digital as a class, and she's going to ask the question to improve her learning. So I think, Shalise, that would be great. And then you could correct mid-course, get more at learning, and then you could still do your final end of the semester reflection. And it almost might be a little bit of a pre and a post-test version, like what Gion was talking about. So I'd love for the rest of you to put some in there. So Gion, if I understood your question correctly, you're asking, do we have data from the faculty who had really high scores on like what they had in common? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure we have that data. Whether or not we're allowed to see it is what I don't, because faculty have to allow their, it's only their department head and themselves and their committee that sees their results. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've never asked for that data. Michael, like, we'd have to get everyone to approve. It's almost like when you do a research study, you have to get your human subjects, right? I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Michael Black would be the person to ask that question.
Okay.
Because if you really want to see that, then he may know how to go about getting the approval. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and I'd love to see the answers.
Yeah.
So.
Because I personally talked to some people who told me that they get good scores on it, and then they share their work, and I couldn't understand.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Well, and I want to get to some other people who have some great things in the chat here. Remember the first slide I showed y'all? Remember the data said faculty, literally I have a study that tells this, faculty who receive high course evals can still be poor teachers. So, I just wanted to mention that. But, ooh, I love it. Okay, so let's see what all y'all are designing. Okay, so June, I guess you put in right before you asked the question, end of semester, collaborative doc, anonymous, group reflection. What is the one area you still need to learn about the course? Cool. So like you'll learn where their gaps are, but then how they might strategically try to like fill that gap maybe after your class, right? Or with another class. I like that. Cool. And remember, you guys, you can include these data. See, Shalise, if you didn't just do it out loud with them, I literally include this Google Doc that I gave you guys. I included that in my P&T process. Like, so if you get it written, you can actually include it in your AFRAPs or in your P&T rather than just verbal. So let's see. Anita's going to do early course, individuals in a small, yeah, because you have a small class. Interesting. Through a journal. Very cool. And I saw that in the research and knew you were doing that. And then the final question is select one of the objectives for this course and describe how you progress. That's awesome, Anita. Yeah, that goes to what June was talking about, where really get it to measure learning, right? Align it with your learning objectives. So y'all, Anita shared another example that I saw in the research, which was, I just didn't have room on this slide, which is you could do this all through a semester-long journal, which is a really cool approach. Let's see. Jaime says, at the end of the semester, written reflection individually, please provide me suggestions to help me improve. Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's really, really nice. And again, even if they hand it to you written, you can still do it anonymous. Like you don't have to collect their names on it, you know. Let's see. Laverne says, midterm written individual or partner. Now that you've got a glimpse of my teaching style, what are some things I can do? Awesome. So Laverne, that would be then you're able to talk to them in class, like the next class day, about their answers, and then change how you're oh, I guess you're teaching online, right? So do you teach this class online?
Yes.
Yeah.
Teaching online.
So how do you plan to discuss the results with them in an online class?
We can do it through a discussion board, or we actually I try to do some collaborative chats 2 or 3 times during the semester.
Okay, cool. Cool.
So I also want to ask, though, with these questions like this, it would be a good idea not to continue changing those questions each time on our SOIs, but choose 2 or 3 good ones if we're going to add these and stick with those for a period of, what, 5 or 6 semesters to get some good feedback.
That's a really good point.
If we're going to add these to our SOIs. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, because you're basically just trying to also create some kind of methodologically rigorous approach. Yeah, if you're trying to track, if that's one of your purposes, is that you're going to teach this class over time, and or you really want to see it across semesters, then yes, repeat your questions. You know, for me, I'm not teaching a lot of the same classes, and so sometimes someone may not want to repeat the questions, right? If they really just want to know about that one class and something like that. But I agree with you. That's a great point. Exactly. This slide that I have in front of y'all was just 4 versions of lots of variations that many of you have pointed out are others to do. So great. Well, that was the end. I appreciate y'all staying for a little bit longer. I'm going to post this. This is kind of where I got some of the research and some of the strategies that we talked about today, and I will post this on in the BlazeView 101 module, right, that we have on trainings, and we're putting all of our recordings up there. I will also put up my PowerPoint, and Gian, don't hesitate to follow up with Michael Black with your question about if you could see some of the data from, you know, from other people's SOIs, and let me know if you get that data. I'd be very interested in that too. And then I will also follow up with Michael about if he's ever run a workshop on how to like methodologically analyze SOIs, or if he has another guide for it. I found this web page. I just put it in the chat, and it was at the end of my PowerPoint. Whereas it's almost like I feel like I was quoting from that a lot today. Like it's almost like I think when he created that web page, that's what he was trying to get at a little bit, Laverne. But it still doesn't actually like teach faculty how to do like a thematic analysis. So I get what you mean about I get what you guys are asking for. So I'll speak to Michael and see if he would be the better person to run that, or if he and I were to co-facilitate it. Because clearly every webinar can't cover everything, but that was I didn't think I would focus on that for this webinar, but I can see that there's a need for that as well. So thank you guys. I'll remain on if you have any additional questions, but otherwise I'm happy to follow up with further questions. Yes, think positively, growth mindset, power poses. Good to see all of you. See you in person soon, hopefully. with masks or in safe ways. So, bye guys. I'll hang on if you have any additional questions.
It's me and you. It was great.
Hello.
Great, yeah.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me stop the recording.